Hello and welcome to Noctis Cam. This is Noctis, and I am bringing you a little overview of the New Bloom Festival, which is a new event that's coming to Dota 2, and as well taking a look at the patch that is supposed to be coming out with this new event. The patch will be mostly a first impression of the updates that are coming at a beginner level. So I know a lot of channels like Purge Gamers and Beyond the Summit and Join Dota do a lot of patch analysis during the big patches, and they typically look at all the changes that are coming and do some expert analysis on them. But I figured I'd bring you something more along the lines from the beginner's perspective. So I'm going to talk about what I think about the changes from someone who plays moderately and watches moderately the professional scene, what I think they'll do, and if I'm excited about the changes and whatnot. So let's get into it. So this is the New Bloom Festival, which is the new event that is coming to Dota 2 after the Wraith Night event. So we have some little information here about dormant powers and emerging beasts. I believe we're trying to collect ingots, in which we use for things as we go along, and we have some items that we can get for that. So we got some recipes, which will probably give some rare items, unique items and such, some wards, looks like a mount, not sure who it would be for, maybe for Disruptor potentially, and then a courier, and I'm assuming shades will probably be similar to the shards from Wraith Night, and it'll have some modified arena. So you can check out dota2.com/newbloom/day1, and that'll give you most of the information you need for this event. And I won't spend too much time going over this because you can read it in detail and see what it's all about. What I would like to get into, though, is the page 2, or the day 2 for the event, which first we have a new hero coming to the Dota 2 hero pool, Terrorblade. I'm not sure if he's from Dota or not. I never played Dota, so he'll be new to me regardless of whether he's from Dota or not. His skills seem kind of interesting. Reflection, create a double of your foe, which then attacks its original as it slows their movement. Conjure image, summons forth an illusion of yourself to aid you in battle. Metamorphosis, embrace the darkness within, trade your melee attack for a ranged strike while gaining additional damage. And I'm assuming the ultimate, Sunder, sever the soul of an ally or enemy, exchange your health for theirs. So sounds like a pretty interesting skill set, making a duplicate of your enemy, duplicate of yourself, being able to switch from melee to range, but potentially only for a certain amount of hits or something, so not necessarily the same as Troll Warlord's Berserker's Rage, which allows him to switch on a whim, I guess. And Sunder seems like a pretty strong spell, I guess. If you're trying to save a teammate, you could give them your health points and let them live, or if you're trying to kill an enemy, you could swap quickly and drain them quickly and then kill them off. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets played. I look forward to it. I'm sure I'll try him out, see if I can play it all. So we have some Arcana item for Terrorblade, which will have some custom animations and such. You'll get new animations, altered voice, you'll get a new base skin and model with special ambient effects, hero icon, portrait, loadout pose and minimap, new spell effects and icons, socketed with gem that tints the coloring of Terrorblade and all of its abilities, and custom death effect as well for all of your victims. So that's pretty cool. It's very comprehensive set, gives you a lot of custom in-game features and whatnot for the hero, so I'm sure for anybody who will be wanting to get into that, I'm sure they'll pick that up. We also have an update for a new game type, which is random ability draft. So essentially, you're assigned a hero at random, and from that, there is a pool of selected abilities that you can choose from. So, as you can see in the hero or in the pictures here, we have Luna with the Pudge Hook, and I believe we have a Crystal Maiden with the Finger of Death from Lion, and I'm not sure if that's supposed to be Rot from Pudge as well. But essentially, it'll be somewhat interesting having random heroes with a random assortment of abilities. So it should be kind of a fun, casual, maybe a good game type for like in houses and whatnot, just to screw around in. So sounds pretty fun. And we will get into the main section of this, which will be the first impression to the 6.80 patch update. So I'm going to read through pretty much all of it and give a brief synopsis of what I think about it, like if I think it's good change or bad change from my perspective, which, as I mentioned before, is that of a beginner. So it's not necessarily going to be high expert analysis. It'll just be a basic like once over of what I think about all the changes. Okay, so getting into it, we've got general changes. We have you now lose 1 gold per second if you haven't picked a hero after the selection timer for all pick. Also, all pick selection time has increased from 60 to 75, but the pre-creep time is reduced from 90 to 75. So you're getting an extra 15 seconds to pick your hero, but you're also losing 15 seconds to between when you pick your hero and when the creeps spawn. I think this is mostly being done because right now the habit for most people in all pick is to wait until everybody has picked and then counter pick. So sometimes your team won't even pick all of their heroes until nearly creep spawn. So they're just wasting all of that time trying to wait out the opponents and pick heroes that are going to counter. So it's really kind of annoying. Like you want to play, let's say, a bounty hunter or something, so they pick something that easily counters bounty hunter, and then kind of makes it like an unfair game and not really as fun because you just want to have some fun and play bounty hunter, and now you're getting counter picked and it's just not as enjoyable, I guess. So Roshan no longer stops upgrading his HP, damage, armor at 45 minutes. So I guess previously at 45 minutes, Roshan would be at his strongest point, and now as it is beyond 45 minutes, he will continue to upgrade his HP, damage, and armor. And also his upgrade rate has increased by 20%, so now as time goes on, Roshan is going to become harder and harder to kill, so there's not going to be those instances where the team is snowballing and they have some minus armor and they just wipe out Roshan in seconds, essentially. It'll take a little bit more time now, and it'll give the other team a little bit more time to try and set up and get in there and defend Roshan as well. And the bounty has been rescaled from 105 to 600 to 150 to 400. So you get a little bit extra gold guaranteed, but at the same time you can't get quite as much gold in the long run, so not necessarily going to give you as high of a chance of getting a high boost in gold from Roshan, but that's probably not necessarily a bad thing because you still get the experience and you're still getting the Aegis of the Immortal to give you 1 free life, essentially. So there's still benefits to doing Roshan. And we're getting into the heroes now. So we've got Alchemist. Night Vision has been reduced from 1400 to 800. So this has kind of been happening during most of the recent patches. They've been slowly changing most of the heroes, and the ones with night vision advantages have been losing those advantages and going to the default 800. I think this is just trying to keep everything on the same level so that certain heroes don't have unfair advantages at night or day. Like certain heroes like Night Stalker have higher night vision typically because they are a creature of the night, I guess, but this is just trying to level out the playing field a little bit. Unstable concoction, maximum shaking duration reduced from 7 to 5.5, and there's a little note here which is the maximum power is still reached after 5 seconds. So essentially, the timer when unstable concoction was initially released or set was typically 7 seconds, and you'd have that amount of time to run around and throw it at somebody. Now that's been reduced by a second and a half, so you have a little bit less time, so you can't necessarily cock the unstable concoction farther back and run in as much. You might actually have to do it a little closer to the enemies, giving them a little bit more time to potentially prepare for it. And unstable concoction no longer continues to get stronger while it is in the air. So that's actually, I didn't know that it did that, which is kind of crazy if you think, like, if you throw it and they blink away or something, you might be adding an additional second to that concoction. And if it wasn't thrown at max damage already, it might have been by the time it reaches the enemy. So you could almost count on the travel time being long enough that you get maximum damage, but now you actually have to time it a little better. If you want that maximum damage, you actually have to time it properly and throw it when you need to, which now, if 5 seconds is maximum power, you really only have half a second to throw it, so it's going to be harder to get those big unstable concoction damages and like essentially wiping out a support in one hit. So I think that's a good change. Unstable concoction is still a pretty strong disable. So we've got Ancient Apparition, Ice Vortex spell damage amplification increased from 10, 15, 20, 25 to 15, 20, 25, 30. So an increase of 5 at all levels. So this is just increasing his damage, and it also increases the duration by 4 seconds. So not only are you getting a better amplification of damage, you're also getting a longer duration. And the stickiness increased from 0.1 to the standard 0.5 aura value. So I would say the last one is probably again making everything consistent with each other, and the other two are just increasing his overall potential damage. I don't know if he got nerfed too much in the last couple patches, but he hasn't been playing that much, so probably trying to give him some extra damage and see if he'll come back into the scene. Anti-Mage, Mana Void radius increased from 300 to 450. So when you use Mana Void on a hero, it does a little AoE around that hero and damages nearby enemy heroes. So now that's been increased by 150, which is pretty good. It's a 150% increase in the radius, so you can potentially get those big Mana Void rampages or ultra kills or something if you get lucky and drain someone enough of their mana. And added AoE targeting cursor for Mana Void. So I'm assuming essentially you would have to target select the hero directly to use Mana Void, so now it might be a little circle instead of like 450 radius, and then you cast it in that range and it Mana Voids them. Not entirely sure, but that's my guess. I'll have to try it out. I don't play him too much though. Axe, base HP regen increased from 2 to 3. Berserker's Call duration increased from 1.5 to 2.53 to 2, 2.4, 2.8, 3.2. And Berserker's Call cooldown rescaled from 10 to 16, 14, 12, 10. So a little bit of a buff to Axe. Axe actually got a pretty big nerf in the last patch, and a lot of his skills were kind of cut down a bit because they were too spammable and too strong. But they must have probably nerfed it a little too much, so now they're trying to kind of go back and give him a little bit of a buff to make him usable again. So the base HP regen, just allowing you to naturally regain health a little bit quicker. Increasing the duration of the Berserker's Call gives you more chance for doing damage. I think Berserker's Call, that one might be the armor one. And the cooldown rescale, it's probably just like a lot of times when it's 10 at all levels or something like that, people don't necessarily find the need to skill it up past the first couple levels because you don't get as much of a benefit from it. But if you have it scaling like that, then it'll force people to level it up sooner to try and get the cooldown faster. Yeah, so Berserker's Call is the one that gives him armor. So now it's just giving him a little bit bonus armor for a little bit longer, and you have to skill it up in order to get it down to a spammable level, I guess. And we have Bat Rider. Attack animation time improved from 0.5 to 0.3. So I'm assuming they're doing this mainly because they really nerfed Bat Rider a lot. And now they're trying to make him usable again, I would assume. But yeah, they nerfed his ultimate, they nerfed his turn time, and I think his attack time, and his base damage as well in some of the more recent patches. So yeah, they're probably trying to even it out a little bit, giving him a minor improvement. Beastmaster, Call of the Wild Hawk duration reduced from 60, 70, 80, 80 to just 60, and the Wild Boar duration from 70, 80, 90 to just 60 as well. So that's probably just keeping everything a little more standard, keeping them up for a minute instead of variable time lengths. And Call of the Wild no longer destroys previous summons on cast. So I'm assuming that means that if you have a boar up and then you summon a second boar, the first one will not be automatically overwritten by the second one, and they'll be up at the same time, but for a limited amount of time, depending on the time frame in which they're up. So as it is now, it'd be a 40-second duration on the cast, so you could technically have two of them up for 20 seconds if you wanted. And Bloodseeker, Thirst bonus speed and damage rescaled from 7, 14, 21, 28 to 5, 15, 25, and 35. So essentially you're getting less damage at the first level, but all subsequent levels you're getting extra thirst bonus damage, and I'm assuming extra bonus speed as well. So that's going to make Bloodseeker faster and stronger as he gets thirst. And Bloodbath now gives the full hero kill benefit instead of only half if he is within a 325 AoE when a hero dies. So as it's as it is now, Bloodbath, if you're only close to the hero when it dies, but you're not necessarily the person who last hits them, you'll still get some of that HP back, but you wouldn't get all of it. But now, if you're within that 325 OE, you still get the full benefit. So depending on what level it is, you could get up to 40% of your life back for them dying. So that's pretty good. So now you can hopefully run around with your team and keep regenerating health if you manage to kill them subsequently. Next we have Brewmaster, and his Primal Split cooldown reduced from 180, 160, 140 to 140, 120, 100. So reducing by 40 seconds on each subsequent level. So just making his ultimate a little more spammable. And they've made some changes to Brewmaster in the past few patches, which I thought were kind of cool, but I haven't really seen him played at all, really, in any games. So they're probably just trying to balance him out, make his ultimate a little stronger so that he hopefully gets back into the metagame. Bristleback base damage reduced by 4. So not a huge change, but he is pretty strong right now. He's definitely a strong semi-carry. If he gets to a snowball and starts getting those items up early and gets tanky, he can really be a lot to deal with. And his quill sprays do a lot of damage, and sometimes it can just be to the point where he can chase down your whole team and you can't really do anything about it. So I think it's a good idea. Little minor nerfs here and there to try and keep him equivalent to everybody else. And next we have Brood Mother, which I think are some interesting changes. So you can no longer leave the map boundaries. So as it is now, if you threw down a web, you could run outside of the map and kind of break it a little bit. And so now you can't do that, so you have to stay within the areas that would be defined by the map itself. And I think it says it also affects free pathing for Spectre and Batrider and whatnot, so they can no longer hide up in those like really high crevices where nobody else can reach them. So it makes them a little bit easier to kill. The spin web no longer provides 200 vision, so now they would just be, you would know that they were there, but you wouldn't actually be able to see anything around them. So they don't act as like little mini observer wards where they're placed. And free pathing is now removed when enemies have vision over you. So I'm assuming if they have a dust or a gem or a sentry and they see you, you can no longer just use your webs and go run off into the forest and hide. You're actually blocked by the trees for that duration, and you would have to try and escape without just, you know, hiding in the trees. You would actually have to run away, which I think is a good change, because there have been some cases where I've seen brood mothers just hiding in like ridiculous places and nobody else could attack them. If you had an unfortunate team like all melee heroes or something like that, and just became a pain in the ass really. So Centaur Warrunner, Stampede cooldown reduced by 120, 90, 60 to 90, 75, 60. So a little bit of a reduction at the lower levels, but still the same at level 3. So probably just making it a little bit more spammable early game, a little more useful in the early game to help your team out. Clockwork hits required to kill power cogs, rescaled from 3 to 2, 2, 2, 3. So now at lower levels, power cogs will be easier to destroy. So right now you'd have to hit them 3 times at all levels in order to destroy them, but with this change you could take them out after 2 hits. So maybe making it easier to escape his cogs if you get stuck in there. Crystal Maiden, base intelligence reduced by 3. So that's going to reduce her base damage by 3, and it's also going to reduce her base mana pool by 39. So a little bit of a nerf. She is a really strong support right now. She's probably one of the best. I see her drafted a lot in games, and her skills are really good for locking down people and doing some good damage. So little minor nerfs here and there, nothing too crazy. Iron Shell cooldown reduced from 10 to 9, which is crazy because I think the last like 3 patches, Darkseer has gotten at least 1 nerf, if not several nerfs. Iron Shell cooldowns being increased and damage rescaling, and I think some other minor changes here and there, because he was played a lot a few patches ago and he was a really strong hero, so they've been nerfing him. So it's kind of interesting to see them. It's a minor buff, really. It's only a second, but it's still a little bit of a buff, and so keeping him relatively the same. Dazzle, weave duration increased from 20 to 24. So Dazzle's weave was rescaled in the last patch so that it would provide more armor over time, but at a different rate. But I guess they're increasing the duration even more because trying to make him even stronger. A lot of people don't like his ultimate, say it's kind of weak or useless, but I like it. I think it's kind of cool. So they're just trying to make it a little bit stronger, a little more useful. Death Prophet, exorcism cooldown increased from 100 to 115. So right now, her ultimate is very spammable and does a lot of damage. So they're adding a couple 15 seconds on the end there just to make it a little less spammable. It's still a pretty strong ultimate, and with the buffs to the damage it does recently, I think it's still going to be very useful, just not quite as spammable. The silence AoE increased from 350 to 425, so a slight increase in the radius. So now you'll be able to throw out her silence and get a bigger AoE, so you might catch a little more extra hero or something in that, which could swing the tides of the team fight. Dragon Tail cooldown rescaled from 9 to 12, 11, 10, 9. So typically with Dragonite you would max his Breathe Fire, his first ability, and you would leave Dragon Tail at level 1. But now with this change, in order to get Dragon Tail to a 9-second cooldown, which makes it a little more spammable, you have to level it up. So now people might want to get a couple extra early levels into Dragon Tail to get that cooldown reduced so that they can use it more often in team fights. But still a minor change for him. We have a reworked silence for Draw Ranger. So as you can see, the old one was a silence all enemies in a target area. So you had a range of 900, you had a 300 AoE radius, and you had durations of 3, 4, 5, and 6 with a cooldown of 13. And the new silence releases a wave that silences and does a minor non-interrupting knockback. So it has a 250 AoE. It does a distance of 900, a silence duration of 3, 4, 5, and 6, which hasn't changed. The knockback distance is inversely proportional to travel range. So at the closest, you can knock a hero back by 350, and at the max distance of 900, it will knock back 0, and it will do a knockback duration of 0.2. Now, non-interrupting makes me think that you can't use it to interrupt TPs or anything like that, but you could run up to a hero, do the silence on them at close range, and knock them into your own teammates and kind of control the fight that way. So it's kind of an interesting change. Earth Spirit, there are a lot of changes to this. So the Stone Remnant recharge timer increased from 25 to 35. So now as you use your Stone Remnants, they will take 10 seconds longer to regenerate. So you can't just throw out all of them at once and then still be useful for the next team fight. You actually have to be a little more cautious in how you're placing them. Geomagnetic Grip now does a 2, 3, 4, 5 second silence instead of a 1, 1.5 to 2.5 second stun. Okay, so now the Magnetic Grip, instead of stunning enemies as it went through them, it now only does a silence. And the damage is rescaled from 125 to 100, 150, 200, and 250. So instead of doing a stun, it's now more of a nuke, being able to throw out 250 damage at the max level. Boulder Smash damage rescaled from 100, 152, 250 to 125. Okay, so they pretty much swapped the damage that Geomagnetic Grip did and put that on the Boulder Smash, and then vice versa for Boulder Smash to Geomagnetic Grip. So kind of changing the role of the things. And also, Boulder Smash now does a stun instead of a silence. So now your Geomagnetic Grip will be your silence with a heavy nuke, and your Boulder Smash will be a low damage but a stun. And it stuns for the same? Almost the same. A little bit, like 0.25 of a second less, but pretty much the same. The radius has been decreased from 250 to 200, so a little nerf there. Rolling Boulder now gets interrupted if disabled during the initial 0.6 rolling charge, instead of only when it's moving. Okay, so now if you were to stun Earth Spirit within the initial time he casts it before he actually starts moving, you could interrupt his rolling boulder entirely and stop him from using it. Geomagnetic Grip now kills trees along the path of the dragged ally hero. So I guess there might be issues in times where you pull an enemy here, or you pull an allied hero and then they get stuck in trees or something, so now it'll destroy trees along the path. But that will also make it easier for enemy heroes to chase them down, because you couldn't just pull them through trees and let them escape while the enemy hero has to walk around. They could now technically just run along that path and keep chasing. Targeting someone directly with Boulder Smash will now be blocked by Lincoln Sphere, so now if you actually Boulder Smash a hero directly, it can be broken with Lincoln Sphere. Fixed being able to cast Geomagnetic Grip on magic immune allies. Fair enough. Boulder Smash being able to target magic immune units. And fixed Rolling Boulder traveling distance going farther than intended if you use a Stone Remnant near the end of the roll. So just some minor changes to targeting magic immune units and the distance on the Rolling Boulder. Earthshaker, base movement speed increased from 300 to 310, and strength gain increased from 2.5 to 2.9. So that's pretty good. Some minor buffs to Earthshaker, a little bit quicker initially, and strength gain increased by 0.4. So for every 10 levels that you gain on Earthshaker, you're going to gain an additional 4 strength, which doesn't seem like too much, but that is an extra 4 damage, and it also is an extra, what is it, 29? 4? Yeah, still an extra like almost 120 life, I think. Think so. 19. Oh, okay, 19. So you would get what? 4, 19, 40, 36, 76, 76. So an extra 76 hit points for every 10 levels. So again, not huge changes, but still changes nonetheless. Enchantress, base armor reduced by 1, so a minor nerf there, a little bit less armor starting off. Enigma, black hole AoE increased by 25, and cast range increased by 25 as well. So now you can cast it a little bit farther away, and you can have it hit slightly more. Faceless Void, Chronosphere cooldown reduced from 120, 110, 100 to 120, 180. So now a little bit of a decrease in the cooldown for Chronosphere. You can use it a little bit more often. You now have 1,000 movement speed and phase while you are in Chronosphere. So it makes you essentially a race car while you're in Chronosphere, and you can phase through things. So if you Chronosphere someone who's hiding behind trees or something, you could actually walk through the trees and attack them. I'm assuming that's what it means. Time Walk mana cost reduced from 120 to 90, so making it a little more spammable, less hard on your mana pool. I think that's a pretty good change. I haven't seen Faceless Void used that much, and some minor changes, but maybe he'll be a little more useful. Burning Spear duration increased by a second. Inner Vitality bonus heal below 40% increase from 15, 30, 45 to 60 of primary attribute to 30, 45, 60, 75. So a 15% increase on all levels. And Inner Vitality cast range increased by 100. So some minor buffs to Huskar, not too huge. Forged Spirit armor reduction, or Forged Spirit armor reduced from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now the Forged Spirits are a little less tanky. Their attack range has been reduced from 3 to 900, to 32690, so now they have to get much closer to attack you at higher levels. EMP burn increased from 100 to 400 to 100 to 550. So a max EMP will now do more EMP burn, and the delay is 3.7 to 2.6 to 2 to 2.6. So is the delay always 2.6? I'm going to assume that the delay at all levels is now 2.6. Alacrity mana cost reduced from 75 to 45, so a little bit less mana for Alacrity, a little more spammable. Ghost Walk movement speed from minus 30, 25, 20 down. So now you actually will gain movement speed from higher levels of Ghost Walk, as in not losing as much and whatnot. Interesting. Jakiro, Ice Path damage rescaled 25, 50, 7500 to just 50. So initially Jakiro's Ice Path would do 100 damage at all levels, and then that was rescaled to the current 25, 50, 75, 100. But I guess people see that it is still a relatively strong skill, so now it will do 50 at all levels. So at level 1 it will do more damage, at level 2 it will do the same, but it'll be weaker later on in the game. Just one sec. Liquid Fire DPS increased by 5 at all levels. Yep. Dual Breath Burn and Slow duration increased from 4 to 5, so now you get a little bit more slow, a little bit increased duration of the burn. DPS increased from 5, 10, 15, 20 to 16, 36, 56, and 76. Wow. Dual Breath has got some big increases here. So now the damage per second on Dual Breath is significantly stronger at level 4, and it now lasts an additional 1 second. So now you're going to get, not only are you getting an additional 56 damage per second, and you're also getting an additional second, so that's pretty big. And the Dual Breath damage interval improved from every 1 second to every 0.5 seconds. So every half second it will do an instance of damage. And if you're doing 76 damage per second, does that mean that you're then doing every 33 seconds? Or no, 38 seconds? Potentially. Or every half second you're doing 38 damage. Dual Breath attack speed slow increased from minus 20 to minus 30, so a little bit even slower with Dual Breath. Removed initial impact damage from Dual Breath. Okay, so it does slightly more damage overall, but not by too much. Fair enough. Juggernaut, Blade Fury cooldown reduced 30, 28, 26, 24 to 30, 27, 24, 21. So a minor change to his Blade Fury, not a huge change though. Keeper of the Light, Mana Leak stun duration increased from 1.3, 1.6, 1.9, 2.2 to 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3. So now you get an additional 0.8 seconds at max level for the Mana Leak stun. Pretty interesting. Legion Commander, Moment of Courage now only procs 1 extra lifesteal attack. It would previously sometimes cause multiple extra lifesteal attacks per proc. Okay, so now it makes sure it only procs 1 attack in retaliation to get lifesteal, and then waits for its grace period to go over. The buff grace period increased from 0.5 to 1, and Moment of Courage cooldown reduced from 1.2 to 0.9. So if I look at it quickly, so now it can be activated longer or more frequently, because there was a 1.2 second cooldown, but now there's a 0.9 second cooldown, and you get a buff grace period. Interesting. Minor changes, nothing too huge. Leshrac, Lightning Storm jumps have decreased 4, 6, 7, 8 to now 4, 5, 6, 7. The storm damage has also decreased slightly. The cooldown reduced from 5.5 to 4, so it's a little more spammable. And the mana cost has been reduced from 100, 150, 130, 145 to 90, 100, 110 to 120. So a little bit more spammable, a little less mana per cost, but not quite as many jumps, and not quite as much damage. Lena, Dragon Slave initial final AoE increased from 275 150 to 275 200. So a minor increase to the Dragon Slave AoE, only on the final AoE though. Fiery Soul duration increased from 7 to 9, and the movement speed increased from 4, 5, 6, 7 to 5, 6, 7, 8. So a slight increase in the amount of duration for your Fiery Soul, and you get a little bit more movement speed per level. Lion, Agnum Scepter now causes Finger of Death to hit units within a 200 AoE of the primary target. That should be interesting. So does that mean that as you Finger of Death someone, if there's a bunch of close by units, it will fan out and hit them at the same amount of damage, or will it scale back as it jumps? Not 100% sure, I'll have to test it out, but that sounds pretty fun. Lone Druid, Spirit Bear's Entangle is no longer an orb effect. So now you could get something like Scotty on the bear that is a constant orb effect, and it would not override the Entangle. So you could proc Entangle and the Scotty orb effect at the same time. That's cool. Lycan, Wolves Fade time decreased from 3 to 1.7, so now your wolves will become invisible quicker at their... I think they only go invisible at level 4 though. But now they will fade quicker. Level 3 Lycan wolves now... Oh, okay. So now 3 and 4 have invisibility. And level 4 now have passive ability that gives them 15 HP regen. Wow. So a few patches ago, Lycan got nerfed a lot. He was a very strong jungler. He could get a very quick bonus by going in the jungle, using his wolves, and coming out after like 10 minutes with a whole bunch of good stuff. He could solo Roshan, and because of that, he got nerfed. He got a lot of nerfs against him. His wolves were made really weak. They essentially could do nothing in the early game, and so it really decrease his ability to do anything. But I guess they're trying to kind of come back on that and give him a little bit more utility now, make his wolves a little bit stronger so that he can still be viable. Magnus base intelligent increased by 2, so 2 extra damage, 26 extra mana starting off. Not too big of a change there. Medusa mana shield damage absorption increased from 0.75, 1.2, 1.75, 2.25 to 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. So now for every point of mana, you'll absorb slightly more damage with your mana shield. Not a huge change though. Wow, they changed it again. So in the last patch, they changed Meepo's ultimate ability. Initially, Meepo would have to get his ultimate, like most heroes, at 6, 11, and 16. And that was kind of bad in a way that Meepo's strength really comes online once he gets his ultimate and he starts duplicating himself. So if you got ganked a lot or you got kind of shut down in your lane, he became a very strong liability for your team and you really couldn't do anything. So now they've reduced it even more. Initially they had reduced it, or rescaled it I guess, from the 6, 11, 16 to 4, 11, 18. So you could get your first level at a slightly earlier level, but you had to wait a little bit longer to get your third skill into it. But now they've dropped each one by 1. So now at level 3 you can get your ultimate, and at 10 and 17. So hopefully that'll make him a little bit more viable in the early game. And Divided We Stand now passively reduces your revive timer by 10, 20, and 30%. Wow, so if you die as a Meepo, you will now revive slightly quicker if you have Divided We Stand. Interesting. Morphling. You can now cast and attack while in waveform. So when you waveform through something, you can now do stuff. So you could waveform and potentially cast an adaptive strike as well, or you could potentially cast an item while waveforming, or you could attack. So hopefully, blow up somebody even quicker. Nature's Prophet, Wrath of Nature, mana cost increased. 150, 200, 250, 175, 225, 275. So a little minor increase to his ultimate ability. Nothing too huge. Necrophos, Death Pulse now hits units in Fog of War. So, interesting. So, if you were to cast Death Pulse, let's say on a group of creeps, and the enemy hero was just outside of vision, but still within the AoE of Death Pulse, it will still jump over to them and do damage. So that's pretty useful. Like if you were mid and you were right on their stairs going up to their tower, you could Death Pulse from the low ground and still hit them even if they were up on high ground outside of vision. So that's kind of cool. Night Stalker, Crippling Fear's Night Mischance increased from 40 to 50%. So now he makes it even harder to hit him at nighttime. Next Assassin, cast range on Impale now matches the travel range. This has no impact on the length or the area of Impale. Okay, so nothing really major there. Ogre Magi, Unrefined Fire Blast mana cost changed from 400 to 60% of your current mana. So instead of a static number of 400 mana, it now costs 60% of your mana. You can always cast this spell if you have only 100 mana remaining. The spell costs 60 mana. Oh wow. So initially, if you were casting it, it would cost 400 every time you cast it, but now you could technically cast it indefinitely, because if it was always taking 60% of your current mana, then as you used it, it would just continue to take a diminishing amount of mana to cast. Interesting. Omni Knight, Degen Aura Stickiness increased from 1 second to 2 seconds. This is how long the debuff lasts on enemies after they leave the AoE. By default, auras are a half a second. So once you get within the area for the degen, it latches onto you, and then once you leave that AoE, it'll remain with you for now 2 seconds. Outward Devourer, Astral Imprisonment cast range reduced by 50, so a minor change there. Phantom Assassin, invisible heroes now trigger Blur. Blur delay reduced from 1.5 to 0.75. So that's an interesting change. Blur is her passive, I believe, giving her invasion. So if an invisible hero now gets near you, you could potentially tell that they're nearby if you paid attention to your blur activating, and it has a reduced delay. Fair enough. Queen of Pain, Sonic Wave, Scepter cooldown rescaled from 170/40 to 40. So if your Agnum Scepter, your ultimate will become 40 at all levels. Fair enough. Ricky, base HP regen increased by 0.75, so you get 200% HP regen right off the bat compared to previously. Sand King, Sandstorm radius rescaled from 275, 325, 375, 525 to 525. So now at all levels, Sandstorm will be at a 525 radius. Shadow Demon, Shadow Poison, max effective stacks increased from 4 to 5. Shadow Shaman, Shackle duration increased. Is it 0.25 per level? Yes. So a slight increase at the Shackle duration per level. And the Mass Serpent wards can no longer trap Roshan. So that was a little trick that you could do with Shadow Shaman. You could essentially trap Roshan within your Mass Serpent wards, and he would continue to try to attack your hero directly, and the Mass Serpent wards would essentially kill him without any resistance. Global Silence cooldown reduced from 140 to 130, so a minor buff to Silencer's ultimate. Skywrath Mage, Mystic Flare damage increased from 6, 9, 1200 to 6, 1000, 1400. So now his ultimate does more damage at level 2 and level 3. Slardar, bash damage increased by 10 and 20, 30. So it's been rescaled to do more damage at all levels except for level 1. Slark, pounce damage reduced by 10, 20, 30, 40. So it's been rescaled to be weaker at all levels. And Shadow Dance cooldown reduced by 5 seconds. So in the last patch, Shadow Dance used to be a very spammable ultimate, but it wouldn't necessarily make you invisible like it does now. But since they made it so that you were completely invisible while using it, it's a longer cooldown, but they reduced it a little bit. Sniper, a range bonus from the Take Aim passive. So now you will get an extra range per, you get an extra 80 at level 4. So you would be adding an additional 400 range to your attack. So it would make you pretty strong. You'd be able to hit them from quite a far distance away. Spirit Breaker, you now gain vision over your target while you are casting Nether Strike. So as you're casting your ultimate on them, you get vision over them, so you can't lose vision of them and whatnot. Storm Spirit, base movement speed reduced by 5, nothing too major there. Sven, base armor increased by 3. Warcry, cooldown reduced at all levels, so giving him a little bit more survivability early game and a little more spammable on his Warcry. Terrorblade already has some changes apparently. Sunder cooldown reduced from 160, 110, 60 to 120, 80, 40, so a bit of time off there at every level. Sunder is no longer partially blocked by magic immunity. And Reflection cast range increased from 250 to 275. Tidehunter, Kraken Shell debuff threshold reduced from 600 to 600, 550, 450. And the damage block increased 9, 18, 27, 36 to 10, 20, 30, 40. So some minor buffs to Tidehunter's Kraken Shell. Timbersaw, base strength reduced by 3. Tinker, added Aghanim Scepter. Wow. Doubles laser cast range and heat-seeking missile count. Wow. So this will be pretty interesting, because typically Aghanim Scepters only modify the ultimate ability, but since Tinker's ultimate is just rearm, which essentially just resets cooldowns, the Aghanim Scepter now modifies his laser and his heat-seeking missile. So that's pretty cool. Treant Protector, Overgrowth AoE increased by 50, so that's his ultimate. Nature's Guise cast range increased by 300. Troll Warlord, Fervor max stacks rescaled from 2, 3, 4, 5 to just 4 at all levels. And attack speed per stack rescaled from 20 to 16, 22, 28, 34. Wow. So you will get more attack speed per stack at levels 2, 3, 4 than you did initially. Now, how does it work out? You would get an additional 100 attack speed at the previous version. At this version, you would get an additional 120, 136. So you get 36 more attack speed at max level for Fervor now. Tusk. Secondary units hit by a snowball now take the same impact as a primary unit. Damage increased and stun increased. So now if you were to snowball into somebody and there was somebody nearby, they would also get hit and stunned for that snowball. Undying. Soul Rip cooldown reduced from 25, 20, 15, 20 to 24, 18, 12, and 6. So making Soul Rip more spammable at all levels. Vengeful Spirit, Wave of Terror, armor reduction increased from 2, 3, 4, 5 to 3, 4, 5, 6. So a little minor buff to her Wave of Terror. Venomancer, base damage reduced by 5, and HP regen reduced from 0.75 to the default 0.25. So making Venomancer a little more squishy and weak in the early game. He's a really strong support right now. He gets picked up quite a lot and banned out, so some minor nerfs to him. Visage. Base movement speed reduced by 5. Grave Chill mana cost rescaled to 100 at all levels instead of scaling up. And familiars are now properly magic immune. They were previously 96 magic resistant and immune to most stuns, but now they are entirely a magic immune, I assume. Some minor nerfs to him, nothing too big though. Warlock, upheaval duration increased by 4 seconds. Wind Ranger, focus fire mana cost reduced from 200, 300, 400 to 150. Wow, that's a big change from level 3. And focus fire no longer has a cast animation, so now it's instant cast. Excuse me. Witch Doctor, Maledict, AoE increased from 150 to 165, little minor increase there. Voodoo Restoration initial mana cost reduced 25, 50, 75, 100, 20, 30, 40, 50. So a minor decrease in the initial cost of doing the Voodoo Restoration. Paralyzing cast can now bounce units in Fog of War. So again, similar to the Necrophos Death Pulse being able to hit units within the Fog of War, the casks will now bounce to people within Fog of War. So even if you think you're safe being hidden behind the fog, you can now be stunned. Wraith King, Reincarnation slow increased by another 25%, and the slow duration increased by a second. And our final hero to receive a change. Arc Lightning cast range increased from 700 to 850. So making that a little more usable from a distance. Cool. And just one sec. And into the items. So Animal Courier, Ground Courier, bounty per player reduced from 175 to 150, but the Flying Courier is still 175. So you get a little less gold per player for killing the Animal Courier, the standard courier. Arcana Boots, mana cost increased by 10, so it takes a little bit more to activate their active ability. Battle Fury, AoE Cleave increased by 25, so a little bit more AoE on the Cleave for Battle Fury. Blink no longer has a mana cost. Wow. So now, previously Blink would have a mana cost of 75, so if you bought that item and you were a mana dependent hero, you would often have to switch your treads to int in order to cast Blink Dagger, or you'd run out of mana and then get screwed over and you wouldn't be able to use it. But you can now blink without costing any mana to yourself. Bottle can now be used on your allies by holding down the control key. Interesting. So previously, in order for an ally to use your bottle, you would have to drop it on the ground. They would pick it up and then use it themselves. But now that you can actually cast it on them, essentially, and they would use up a bottle charge through that. Diffusal blade agility bonus increased 25, 26, 25 to 30, so a little buff to diffusal blade. Not too big though. Drums of endurance, you get 1 additional charge, and the recipe cost is now 75 more. So it costs a little bit more gold to build, but you also get an additional charge out of it. Yule's Scepter of Divinity, Cyclone cooldown reduced from 25 to 23, so now you can use the Cyclone a little bit more frequently. Force Staff, the travel speed is reduced. It now takes 0.4 seconds instead of 0.3. So to move the full range of the Force Staff, it takes you an extra 0.1 second to travel that distance. Iron Branch has now been reduced by 3 gold to make it an even 50. Mask of Madness, lifesteal increased from 17 to 20%, so a little bit more lifesteal for Mask of Madness. Mjolnir, Mjolnir, change the area type that is used when static charge hits units. It no longer uses a cone to determine the valid targets, but an AoE in the same distance. So anyone within that AoE will be attacked instead of anybody within a frontal distance, I'm assuming. Necronomicon. Bounties increased again. So now it is 200 gold for killing a Necronomicon at level 3. Their armor has been reduced from 6, 8, 10 to 4 at all levels, so now it's even easier to kill them. And they're not as spammable, so increasing the cooldown by 15 seconds. So these are some pretty hard nerfs to Necronomicon. Sorry. It used to be really popular, and then it fell out of popularity, and then recently it's been coming back pretty strong, and a lot of teams will build at least 1, if not more, Necronomicons. So they're weakening them up again to make them less usable. Observer Ward can be targeted on allies to transfer 1 charge. So I guess if you bought Observer Wards, you can now pass on 1 of those to someone else and split them up instead of having to carry both yourself. Radiance attack bonus increased by 5. Refresher Orb recipe cost reduced by 75. Ring of Aquila, you get an additional 3 agility. Rod of Atos, you get an additional 25 HP bonus. Sanj and Yasha get a slow duration increase by 1 second and a slow increase by 2%. Similar to the Observer Wards, Sentry Wards can now be targeted on allies to transfer 1 charge. Shadow Amulet, fade time is now improved by 0.3 seconds, and you can now cast that on allies. So if an ally was in trouble and you had the Shadow Amulet, you could cast it on them to hide them in place, and it would go on cooldown. Shiva's Guard, blast range increased from 719 to 900, and the speed increased from 3 to 350. So I'm assuming the blast range is increased and the speed at which it gets to that max range has been increased. Smoke of Deceit, duration decreased by 5 seconds, so a little bit less time for smokes. Teleportation Scrolls, stacking delay decreased from 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 3, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5. Interesting. Max targeting range increased from 325 to 375. This is how far away you can teleport to a tower. Okay, so you can teleport slightly farther away from a tower. using teleport squirrels. Tranquil Boots get an additional 5 movement speed and an additional 2 HP regen, but that is while they are not disabled. So once they become disabled, they still go back to their broken form. And the last update for this patch is the Veil of Discord. Strength, agility, damage bonus increase from 3 to 6. So a slight buff to the Veil of Discord. Okay, so that is the entire 6.80 patch, along with the new hero and the new game type which is coming out. So hopefully this is not too bad. It's a beginner's perspective on the patch and whatnot, and what I think about certain changes. And hopefully you enjoy. Alright, have a good night, and again, this is Noctis. If you would like to, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel at youtube.com/NoctisCam. I'm also on Facebook at NoctisCam, facebook.com/NoctisCam. I am on Twitter at NoctisCam. And yeah, you can check me out on those social medias. You can check me out on YouTube or Twitch, all under the same username. And if you like this and want to see more content, please subscribe to my channel. And any help is gladly appreciated. Thank you. Bye.